in the beginning, there was darkness over the face of the earth. And then God said, let there be light, and there was light. Oh, I tell you, we got it. Light guys were on cue. I know some of you guys may have been thinking, what happened? Did y'all forget to pay your light bill? No, we didn't. But you know, in the beginning, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then, when Jesus was here on this earth some 2,000 years ago, he said something similar. Listen to what he said here in John chapter 12, in John chapter 8. This is one of the other I am statements that he made. And so listen to his words here in John chapter 8, verse 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I mean, just think about that. That's a pretty strong claim. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And he said that, if you go back and read the passage, he said that right after a moment when a group of people, a village was about to stone a woman because they had caught her in adultery. And so they had brought her before Jesus, and they said, listen, we caught this woman in sin, and the law says that if you catch him, if you find someone in adultery, you have to stone him to death. And so they were trying to kind of pressure Jesus to kind of buy into that. And Jesus doesn't say nothing. He sees the crowd, sees the woman that's there in shame, and he gets on his knee and he begins to scribble something on the ground. And he gets up and he says to the crowd that's there, ready to stone this woman because she's been walking and living in sin. And he says, if any of you here is without sin, be the first one to throw a stone. And the scripture describes how slowly, little by little, the crowd began to disperse until there was only two people left, Jesus and the woman. And he looks at her there as she sits and she's on the ground in shame, maybe feeling convicted because of her sins, of her past. And Jesus says to her, he says, does no one condemn you? And she says, no one, sir. And then he says, neither do I condemn you. And he says, now go and leave your life of sin. And then Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. That's what Jesus does, is he goes into dark places and he brings light. Can you relate with that? I think about my own life. There was a time when I walked in darkness and I gave myself over to that type of lifestyle. And it was only until the light of Christ came in and it drove that darkness away. I remember there was a time in my life where I kind of felt like there was this cloud of darkness around me. Have you ever felt like that? You ever felt like it's just, so many things going on in your life and maybe it's just one trouble after another. And I remember feeling like I just felt like this cloud of darkness was over me and I couldn't quite shake it off. And as I began to follow Christ, the light of life not only shined bright in my soul and drove that darkness away, it drove that dark cloud away, but I've been walking in that light for the last several years. And that's what Jesus says to us. He says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness.